The crack of the shot tore through the Atlanta night, and my brother Isaiah crumpled, his hand clutching his side as blood bloomed across his shirt. I stood frozen, 10 feet away, my Delta Force instincts screaming to move, but my heart a sister's, heart stuck in my throat. The gas station's neon buzzed like a warning, and Officer Paul Grayson, his face twisted with unchecked power, barked, "Stay down," as if Isaiah, my gentle book-loving brother, was a threat. I'm Jada Carter, 36, a commander who's faced death in deserts and jungles, but nothing prepared me for this Isaiah, the man who built a mobile library for Atlanta's kids, bleeding on asphalt because of a cop's snap judgment. My hand twitched toward my jacket where my Delta Force patch hid, a symbol Grayson would soon regret ignoring. His eyes, cold and narrow, didn't see me in the shadows, didn't know the storm he'd unleashed. I stepped forward, my voice ablade. "You just made the worst mistake of your life." My mind flashed to Isaiah 30, always the dreamer, hauling his library van to neighborhoods like Vine City, 3 miles from here, handing out books to kids who'd never owned one. He'd started Words for Change, a literacy program for 200 kids, his smile brighter than Peachtree Street's lights. I'd chosen a different path. Delta Force, 14 years of missions, my calm forged in chaos. We'd grown up in Atlanta's West End, 5 miles away, dodging trouble in a world that judged us by our skin. At 16, I'd shielded Isaiah from a cop's rough hands at a protest. He'd read me Maya Angelou to calm my rage. Now, his blood stained the pavement, and I felt that old fury. Sharper, deeper. Grayson, 47, stood tall, his badge a shield for his bias. But I saw the flicker in his eyes, fear of losing control, a man shaped by a precinct that rewarded aggression. His partner, Officer Lee, 32, hesitated 15 feet back, her face pale, like she sensed the line they'd crossed. I knelt beside Isaiah, my hands pressing his wound, his breath shallow but steady. "Hold on, Zay," I whispered, my voice cracking. His eyes, warm despite the pain, met mine. A silent pact we'd survive this, like always. A bystander, Tasha, 27, a barista with trembling hands, filmed on her phone, guilt etched on her face for not stepping in. I didn't judge her. She was scared, like we'd all been taught to be. Grayson shouted, "Back off." But his voice wavered as I stood, my 6-foot frame unyielding. I'd faced worse warlords, ambushes, but this was personal. "Call help," I ordered, my tone honed by years of command. Grayson's hand tightened, his arrogance masked for the pressure he felt. A cop pushed by a system that praised quick triggers over questions. I saw it in his clenched jaw, the way he avoided Lee's gaze. He wasn't just a man, he was a product of a broken machine. The gas station felt like a war zone. Every sound sharp as Isaiah's gasps, the hum of pumps, distant sirens 2 miles off. I calculated medics would take 7 minutes from Grady Hospital. I had to keep Isaiah stable, keep Grayson in check, and keep my rage caged. Tasha's video was already spreading, I felt it. Atlanta stirring. Isaiah's library had taught kids to dream. Now, his pain would wake a city. I pulled back my jacket, revealing my patch, and Grayson's eyes widened, his bravado cracking. "You don't know me," I said, "but you will." Lee fumbled her radio, calling for backup, her voice shaky. She'd joined the force to serve. But Grayson's shadow loomed, a mentor who'd taught her to fear first, think later. I saw her doubt, a crack I could use. Memories flooded me. Isaiah and I at 12, reading by the Atlanta Beltline, dreaming beyond our block. He'd wanted to change laws, I'd wanted to protect him. At 20, a cop had shoved him at a rally, calling him trouble. That day I'd sworn to be his shield. Now, I failed. Guilt clawed me, but Isaiah's faint smile grounded me. "Jada, we're tougher than this," he murmured, his voice a lifeline. Tasha, still filming, whispered, "I'm sorry," her eyes wet. I nodded. She was with us now. Grayson paced, his confidence fraying as sirens grew louder. He was a man of contradictions, a 20-year veteran, praised for arrests, but haunted by complaints he'd buried. His precinct, 1,800 strong, rewarded control, not compassion. And he wore that pressure like armor. Medics arrived, their lights flashing across the lot. They worked fast, stabilizing Isaiah, and I followed, my mind racing. At Grady, 4 miles away, doctors swarmed, his condition critical but holding. I sat in the waiting room, my meditation breathe, hold, release keeping me steady. Isaiah's library van, parked at community centers, had sparked hope. Now, his blood sparked outrage. My phone buzzed. Tasha's video hit 1 million views. Hashtag Justice for Isaiah trending. His mentees, 50 kids, planned a vigil at Piedmont Park. 2 miles away, I joined them, 600 strong, their signs bold. Words live on. Pastor Elena Rees, 50, who'd baptized us, led prayers. Her voice a beacon. "This is our fight," she said, 300 candles glowing. Tasha, there too, vowed to do more, her guilt turning to resolve. Grayson's face haunted me, his sneer. His fear wasn't just a rogue cop. He was a symptom, a man molded by a system that saw us as threats. I'd learned in Delta Force, to read enemies, and Grayson was one, his bias deep, his doubt deeper. He'd risen fast, but whispers of brutality followed, ignored by a precinct chasing stats. I called our lawyer, Maya Torres, 42, a civil rights warrior. "We've got him, Jada," she said, her voice sharp. "Taisha's video, plus my drone footage from a community project, it's airtight." I'd used drones to monitor protests, a new tactic, capturing angles phones missed. The audience, 25 to 55, tired of injustice, would feel this rage at Grayson, pride in Isaiah, hope in our fight at the hospital. Isaiah stirred, his hand finding mine. "They're listening, Jada," he whispered, his smile faint but fierce. I saw our childhood nights under stars, days building his library. He'd taught 200 kids to read. Now he'd teach Atlanta to rise. The vigil grew to 1,000 chants, echoing past Peachtree Street. Torres was ready, her case built on drone clips and 10 witness statements. Grayson's precinct was rattled, Lee questioning her role, her loyalty split. I felt the city's pulsing gar, yes, but also resolve. Isaiah's pain was our pain, his fight ours. As I stood by his bed, his breath steady, I knew this was no ordinary battle. I'd faced death before, but this was for life, for Isaiah, for Atlanta, for every soul dismissed. The war had begun, and I was ready, my Delta Force, heart burning for justice. The boardroom door slammed open, and Judge Edward Harlan stormed in, his robes flapping like a vulture's wings, his face red as he pointed at me and shouted, "You think you can sneak in here and ruin me, boy?" The word hit like a slap, and Clara Nugent gasped, her pen clattering to the table, while Richard Holt froze, his eyes darting between us. I stood at the head of the table, my 1998 case file open, the faded Polaroid of my 24-year-old self staring back, and felt the old wound tear open, not just mine, but my mother's, my daughter's, every soul Harlan had crushed with his gavel. I was Marcus Tate, 51, chair of Miami-Dade County's Judicial Oversight Board, and I'd come to hold him accountable, not to cower. My heart pounded, but I kept my voice steady, saying, "I'm here for justice, not revenge," and the room went still, Harlan's sneer faltering as he realized I wasn't the boy he'd sentenced 27 years ago. I'd been that boy once, a law student at the University of Miami, my future bright until Harlan's bias stole it. In 1998, I was accused of stealing a professor's briefcase, a lie spun by a jealous classmate and backed by a cop who said I looked out of place on campus. Harlan didn't blink, calling me arrogant, sentencing me to probation that cost me my scholarship, my apartment, and my mother's health. She'd driven 300 miles from Key West, her hands trembling in a faded sundress, only to faint when the verdict came, her heart breaking as deputies pulled me away. I spent years drifting, washing dishes in Orlando, stacking boxes in Tampere job, a reminder of what I'd lost. But I rebuilt, clawing my way back through a legal aid clinic, night classes, and mentoring kids who saw themselves in my scars. Now, in this Miami boardroom, 70 degrees and sharp with tension, I faced Harlan again, not as a defendant but as the man who could end his career. Harlan's outburst lingered, his word "boy" echoing like a ghost from 1998. I thought of my daughter Lena, now 26, who'd called me last week after 20 years of silence, her voice soft but curious, asking why I'd disappeared. I hadn't told her about Harlan, about the shame that kept me from her. But I carried her picture, her braids and bright eyes, a quiet fire in my chest. I thought of the kids I mentored at a Liberty City Community Center, their rap battles turning pain into rhythm, a project I'd started to give them what I'd needed at their age. Clara, the board's lead attorney, broke the silence, her voice shaking but firm. "Judge Harlan, that language is unacceptable." She was 45, Vietnamese American, her sharp suit hiding a story she rarely shared: her father's internment during a 1980s immigration crackdown, a judge's dismissal of his plea haunting her. Harlan scoffed, his gray hair slick with sweat, and turned to Richard, the board's skeptic, a 50-year-old white lawyer with a Harvard degree and a habit of questioning my impartiality. "You see this, Holt, he's got a vendetta. He's no chair, he's a fraud." Richard shifted, his tie loosening, and I saw his doubt, not just in me but in himself, a man who'd never faced a gavel's weight. I didn't flinch. I pushed my file forward, the pages worn but heavy with truth. "This isn't about me," I said, my eyes locked on Harlan's. "It's about the lives you broke without looking." Harlan's personality was controlled, but brittle when challenged. He'd built a 30-year career on quick verdicts, his courtroom a stage where he played God, dismissing defendants like props. I'd seen it in 1998, his clipped tone, his refusal to hear my defense, and I saw it yesterday when he kicked me out of his courtroom for my Navy shirt, no tie, as if my presence offended his order. But cracks showed now, his hands trembled, his voice pitched higher. He wasn't just a judge, he was a man terrified of losing the power he'd wielded too long. I thought of his clerk, Sarah, a 30-year-old paralegal I'd met at a community forum. Her quiet admission that Harlan berated staff for minor errors, his temper flaring when black or Latino defendants spoke up. She'd slipped me a note last month, detailing cases where Harlan rushed judgments, ignoring evidence. That note was in my folder now, alongside my own case, an officer's lie that I didn't own my car, a defender's ignored affidavit, a photo of me in handcuffs, my mother's shadow in the background. I held up the photo, my voice low but clear. This was me. 1998. You didn't see a person, you saw a problem to clear off your docket. Clara's eyes softened, her fingers tracing her notepad, and I knew she saw her father in me, his voice silenced by a judge like Harlan. Richard leaned back, his skepticism wavering. And I wondered what he saw, maybe his own privilege, untouched by the system's blade. I didn't want their pity, I wanted their courage. I thought of the restorative justice workshop I'd proposed last week, a program to train judges in empathy, to make them feel the weight of their robes. Harlan laughed, a brittle sound, and said, "You think you can lecture me? I've served Miami for decades." But his bravado was hollow, and I saw Sarah's note in my mind, her words about a 19-year-old Jamal, sentenced harshly for a minor theft. His mother's sobs ignored by Harlan. I spoke, my voice rising not in anger but in clarity. "You served yourself, Judge Jamal Maria Carlos. Names you forgot, lives you filed away in 15 minutes. Harlan's face paled and I felt the drama of the moment, the room tilting as truth took hold. I paused, thinking of the new project I'd launched, a digital archive, Voices Unheard, collecting stories of courtroom injustice, shared via a Miami app I'd helped fund. A 22-year-old coder, Malik, one of my mentees, built it, his own brother lost to a biased plea deal. The app was live now, stories pouring in, each one a brick in the wall I was building, not to trap Harlan but to free others. I thought of Lena, who'd texted me yesterday, asking to join the archive's launch, her graphic design skills a bridge we were rebuilding. Harlan's voice cut through, softer now, defensive. I followed the law. "Tate, you can't rewrite history." But history was my weapon, not his. I slid Sarah's note across the table, detailing Jamal's case, and said, "This is last month, not 1998. You haven't changed." Clara read the note, her jaw tightening, and Richard's eyes widened, his Harvard polish cracking. The conflict surged, not just between me and Harlan but within the board, within the system itself. I thought of my mother, her prayers in that 1998 courtroom, her cane tapping through Key West streets until she passed. I'd scattered her ashes in a Miami park, promising to make her proud, not with vengeance but with purpose. Harlan's sneer returned, but it was weaker, his fortress crumbling. I didn't need to shout. My stillness was enough, a lesson I'd learned mentoring kids, watching them rap about their fears, their dreams. I thought of the community vigil I'd planned, a candlelit event to honor those wronged by the system, set for next week in Coconut Grove. Lena would speak, her first public step toward me, and Malik would share his brother's story. The vigil wasn't just for them, it was for me, for the boy I'd been, for the man I'd become. I looked at Harlan, his hands now still, his eyes avoiding mine, and said, "You didn't see me then, and you don't see them now, but we see you." The room held its breath, and I felt the weight of 27 years lift, not gone but lighter. As Clara nodded, Richard exhaled, and Harlan's silence spoke louder than his words. The ending of this moment wasn't a gavel's fall but a promise. I wasn't here to destroy Harlan. I was here to build something stronger, a system that remembered, that listened. I thought of the vigil, the archive, the workshop, each a step toward a justice that didn't just judge but healed. Lena's text flashed in my mind, "Dad, I'm proud." I hadn't earned that yet, but I would. Harlan's career hung in the balance, but so did my legacy, and I knew which mattered more. As Clara gathered her notes and Richard stared at the table, I stood taller, not just for me but for every name Harlan forgot, every voice waiting to be heard. The fight was far from over, but I was ready, and Miami would see it, not in my anger, but in my unwavering stand. I stood frozen as Judge Edward Harlan slammed his fist on the boardroom table, the crack echoing like a gunshot, his eyes wild with fury as he shouted, "You're a liar, Tate, digging up ghosts to ruin me." Papers scattered, Clara knew, flinched, and Richard Holt's chair scraped back, his face pale as Harlan's accusation hung in the Miami-Dade County air, thick with the weight of 27 years of buried truth. I was Marcus Tate, 51, chair of the Judicial Oversight Board, my Navy shirt still creased from yesterday's courtroom humiliation, and I felt the sting of his words, not because they were true but because they echoed the same venom he'd spat in 1998, when he'd branded me a thief and shattered my life. My heart raced, but I steadied my breath, gripping the worn folder of my old case file, the Polaroid of my 24-year-old self, a silent witness. I wasn't that boy anymore, broken by a gavel. I was a man who'd rebuilt through years of mentoring kids, reconnecting with my daughter Lena, and launching projects to give voice to the voiceless. I met Harlan's gaze, not with the fire he expected but with a calm that unnerved him, and said, "The truth isn't a ghost, Judge. It's right here, and it's speaking." His jaw clenched, and the room held its breath. The 70-degree chill, no match for the heat of a reckoning long overdue. Harlan's outburst wasn't just anger, it was fear, raw and unmasked, the kind that strips a man bare when his power slips. I'd seen glimpses of it yesterday, when he'd kicked me out of his courtroom for my lack of a tie, his voice dripping with disdain. And again last week, when his clerk Sarah handed me a note detailing his rushed verdicts against Black and Latino defendants. But now, in this boardroom, his fortress was crumbling. He was 65, gray-haired, his robes a shield he'd worn for decades. Each verdict a brick in the wall he'd built to keep men like me, Black, defiant, unbroken at bay. I thought of Sarah, 30, her quiet courage in that note, her stories of Harlan's temper, his dismissal of a 19-year-old named Jamal, sentenced to a year for a stolen phone, his mother's pleas ignored. I thought of my own mother, her collapse in that 1998 courtroom, her cane tapping through Key West streets until her heart gave out. I'd scattered her ashes in a Miami park, promising to make her proud, not with rage but with purpose. Harlan's fist unclenched, but his eyes burned, searching for an ally in Richard. The board's skeptic, a white lawyer whose Harvard polish hid a discomfort with truths too sharp. Halt, Harlan snapped. You know this is personal. He's unfit to lead. Richard shifted, his tie askew, and I saw his struggle not just with me, but with the privilege that let him sit here unscathed. I didn't wait for Richard's response. I opened my folder, the pages whispering of a life derailed, my 1998 arrest report, the officer's lie that I couldn't own my car, the affidavit my defender never submitted. I held up Sarah's note, its ink fresh but heavy. This is Jamal's case last month, I said, my voice steady but laced with the ache of memory. You gave him a year, Judge, without hearing his side, just like you did to me. Clara, the board's lead attorney, leaned forward, her sharp eyes softening. She was 45, Vietnamese American. Her father's internment in a 1980s immigration sweep, a scar she rarely showed. My father stood where Jamal did, she said, her voice breaking the silence. A judge called him a burden. You called Jamal a thief. What's the difference? Harlan's face paled, and I felt the drama surge, not just my fight but hers, Jamal's, every soul he'd dismissed. I thought of Lena, my 26-year-old daughter, who texted me last night, her words a lifeline. Dad, I'm coming to the vigil. We'd been estranged since she was 5, my shame keeping me from her, but her call last month, her voice soft with questions, had cracked something open. I wanted her to see this, not just my pain but my stand. Harlan's personality was a paradox, charming in public, ruthless in private, his control slipping when challenged. Sarah had told me how he'd berate staff, his voice low but cutting, saving his smiles for cameras. I'd seen it in 1998, his polished tone masking bias, and now, as he leaned back, his sneer returned, weaker but defiant. I followed the law, Tate. You can't rewrite my record. I thought of the new project I'd launched, a letter-writing campaign. Letters to the Bench, where Miami residents sent judges stories of their lives, not to shame but to humanize. A 17-year-old girl, Aisha, one of my mentees from Liberty City, wrote the first, her words about losing her brother to a harsh sentence shaking me. The campaign was growing, letters piling up, each one a plea for judges to see. I slid Jamal's case file across the table, my voice rising, not in anger but in clarity. You didn't follow the law, Judge. You followed habit-crushing verdicts, ignoring voices like Jamal's, like mine. Richard's eyes widened, his skepticism cracking, and I saw him grapple with his own silence, the cases he'd let slide. Clara's story deepened the room's weight. She spoke of her father, deported after a judge like Harlan dismissed his plea, his health failing in detention. I joined this board to stop that, she said, her voice steady now, her eyes on Harlan. Marcus isn't the problem, you are. The conflict escalated, not just between me and Harlan but within the system itself. A system Richard had navigated easily, Clara had fought, and I'd survived. I thought of the mentorship retreat I'd planned, a weekend in Coconut Grove for my Liberty City kids, where they'd meet lawyers, write their dreams, and see a future beyond the courtroom's shadow. Malik, the 22-year-old coder who'd built Our Voices Unheard app, would lead a session, his own brother's story fueling his fire. The app was live, stories of injustice pouring in, each one a thread in the tapestry I was weaving, not to trap Harlan but to free others. I thought of the vigil next week, candles lighting up Coconut Grove, Lena's voice joining mine, a bridge. We were rebuilding. Harlan's voice cut through, softer now, defensive. I made tough calls. Tate, you wouldn't understand, but I did understand too well. I held up Aisha's letter, its words raw. My brother wasn't a criminal. He was 16. I said, you didn't make calls. Judge, you made choices and they broke lives. The room's tension was a living thing, pulsing with every word. Richard spoke, his voice hesitant but clear. Marcus, I questioned your impartiality, but he paused, his eyes on the Polaroid. I see it now, the pattern. His admission was small but seismic, a crack in the wall of doubt. I thought of my mother, her prayers in that 1998 courtroom, her voice whispering through me now. I'd launched letters to the bench for her, for Aisha, for Jamal, for every name Harlan forgot. Harlan's hands trembled, his fortress of control collapsing. He whispered, "You don't know what it's like, sitting there, the pressure." But I cut him off, my voice calm but unyielding. "I know what it's like standing where Jamal stood, where I stood. You chose not to see us." The drama peaked, not in shouts but in the quiet power of truth. Clara's nod, Richard's silence, Sarah's note burning in my hand. I thought of the retreat, the vigil, the letters, each a step toward a justice that listened, that healed. Lena's text flashed in my mind. "I want to know you, Dad." I wasn't just fighting for me, I was fighting for her, for a world where she'd be seen. The ending wasn't a verdict but a shift, a moment where the system's memory stirred. Harlan's career teetered, but my purpose stood firm. I didn't need his apology. I needed Clara, Richard, Miami to see the cost of his choices. I thought of the retreat, where Malik would teach kids to code their stories. Of the vigil, where Lena would speak, her voice a light in the dark. I thought of Aisha's letter, now framed in my office, a reminder that justice isn't a fall but a hand extended. As Clara gathered her notes and Richard stared at the table, I stood taller, my voice a promise. "This isn't about one man's mistakes," I said. My eyes on Harlan's. "It's about a system that let them happen, and we're changing it, one truth at a time." The room exhaled, and I felt my mother's pride, Lena's hope, Aisha's courage, all carrying me forward, not to destroy but to build, not to hate but to heal, for Miami, for justice, for us all. I watched, heart pounding, as Edward Harlan tore off his judicial robe and hurled it onto the boardroom table, the black fabric crumpling like a fallen flag, his voice a raw snarl as he spat. "You've taken everything, Tate, but you'll never take my name." Clara Nugent's eyes widened. Richard Holt stood frozen, and the Miami-Dade County air crackled with the shock of a man unraveling, his 30-year reign collapsing under the weight of truth. I was Marcus Tate, 51, chair of the Judicial Oversight Board, my hands steady on the folder that held my 1998 case file, Jamal's rushed sentence, and Aisha's letter proof of Harlan's bias that had broken lives, including mine. His words stung, not because they hurt, but because they revealed a man clinging to a legacy built on others' pain. I'd faced him 27 years ago, a 24-year-old law student crushed by his gavel, and yesterday, when he'd kicked me out of his courtroom, for my Navy shirt, no tie. Now, I stood as his judge, not with vengeance but with a purpose forged through years of mentoring kids, rebuilding with my daughter Lena, and launching projects to amplify the unheard. I met his glare, my voice calm but unyielding. "You took your own name, Judge, when you stopped seeing justice." The room exhaled, and I felt the tide shift, not just for me but for every soul Harlan had dismissed, their stories rising like a chorus in the 72-degree silence. Harlan's collapse was a spectacle, but it was his desperation that cut depth. The man who'd ruled Miami's courtrooms like a king, now stripped bare, his gray hair disheveled, his hands shaking as he gripped the table. He was 65, his charm a mask that had fooled juries and voters, but I saw the cracks, the temper Sarah, his clerk, had whispered about, the quick verdicts that buried defendants like Jamal, a 19-year-old sentenced for a stolen phone, his mother's sobs unheard. I thought of my own mother, her collapse in that 1998 courtroom, her cane tapping through Key West streets until her heart failed. I'd scattered her ashes in a Coconut Grove park, vowing to honor her with a justice that healed, not harmed. Harlan's outburst wasn't new. It was the same arrogance that had branded me a thief, costing me my scholarship, my dreams, my daughter's childhood. I thought of Lena, 26, who'd joined me last week at a Liberty City Community Center. Her graphic design sketches for our Voices Unheard app bringing us closer after 20 years apart. Her text this morning, "Dad, I'm speaking at the vigil," was a spark in my chest, a reminder of why I stood here. Not for Harlan's fall, but for her future, for Miami's. Clara broke the silence, her voice steady as she read the board's decision, based on evidence of systemic bias. "We recommend the immediate removal of Judge Edward Harlan, effective today." Her words landed like a gavel, final but heavy, her Vietnamese-American roots grounding her resolve, her father's deportation in the 1980s fueling her fight. Richard, the board's skeptic, nodded, his Harvard polish softened by the truth. He'd finally faced. Silence spoke louder than his earlier doubts, a white lawyer wrestling with his own complicity in a system that spared him. I thought of Sarah, 30, whose note had exposed Harlan's pattern, her courage a quiet fire. She'd joined our letter-writing campaign, Letters to the Bench, sending her own story of watching Harlan berate a black defendant. Her words now framed in my office beside Aisha's. I didn't speak yet. I let Clara's verdict settle, let Harlan's crumpled robe tell its own story. He staggered back, his voice a whisper. "You don't know what you've done." But I did. I knew because I'd lived it 27 years of rebuilding. Mentoring kids like Malik, whose Voices Unheard app carried stories of injustice to thousands, each click a step toward change. Harlan's personality was a labyrinth, publicly gracious, privately cruel, his power rooted in control, not compassion. Sarah had told me how he'd charm reporters but snap at staff. his bias subtle but deadly, like when he dismissed a Latina mother's plea as hysteria. I'd seen it in 1998, his clipped tone shutting me down, and now, as he sank into a chair, his defiance faded, replaced by a hollow fear. I thought of the new project I'd launched, a youth justice council, where teens like Aisha, 17, would advise Miami's courts, their voices shaping policy. Aisha, whose brother was jailed under Harlan, had spoken at our first meeting. Her words fierce. No kid should lose their future to a judge's mood. Her courage mirrored mine, but it was hers I wanted to lift. I thought of the healing circle I'd planned, a community event in Wynwood where families shared stories of courtroom pain, not to dwell but to mend. Lena would host, her art guiding, with circle our bond growing with every step. Harlan's voice cut through, softer now, almost pleading. I did my job, Tate. The system's broken, not me. I shook my head, my voice low but clear. You were the system, Judge, and you chose to break it. The boardroom's tension eased, but the weight remained. A shared understanding that this wasn't just Harlan's end but a beginning. I thought of the vigil in Coconut Grove, now a week away, where candles would light up stories like Jamal's, Aisha's, mine. Malik would share his brother's tale, lost to a biased plea deal, his coding a lifeline for others. I thought of the Youth Council's first winner proposal for court translators, inspired by a 15-year-old Sophia whose mother stumbled in Harlan's courtroom without one. Clara spoke again, her voice softer. Marcus, the governor's office recommends you as interim chief justice. The room turned to me, but I felt no pull to that seat. I thought of my mother, her prayers in 1998, her belief in a justice that saw her son. I thought of Lena, her sketches for the Vigil's mural, a tapestry of unsung heroes we'd unveil at a Miami festival. I'd proposed a mural to honor voices like Sophia's, Aisha's, not to glorify mine. I smiled, small but firm, and said, I'm honored, but I don't want a robe that hides me. I want to stand where justice breathes. Clara blinked, Richard nodded, and I felt their respect, not as a leader but as a man who'd chosen principle over power. Harlan stood, his shoulders sagging, and walked toward the door, pausing beside me. His whisper was raw. I didn't see you then, Tate, but I do now. I nodded, not for him but for the boy I'd been, the man I'd become. He left. The doors click, a quiet end to his reign. I thought of the healing circle where Sophia's mother would speak, her broken English a strength, not a shame. I thought of the council, where Aisha would train to testify before lawmakers, her voice a beacon. I thought of Lena, who'd called me Dad last night, her trust a gift I'd earn every day. The board adjourned, but I lingered, my hand on the folder. Its pages a map of my journey, 1998's pain, 2025's purpose. I thought of my mother, her sundress faded but her hope alive in me. I'd started the council for her, the circle for Lena, the mural for Miami. Richard approached, his voice low. I didn't get it before. Marcus, I do now. His honesty was small but real, a step toward change. Clara joined, her eyes bright. We're not done, are we? I shook my head, not even close. Outside, the 95-degree Miami heat wrapped around me, but I felt lighter, not free but unburdened. I thought of the festival, where the mural would rise, Lena's art blending with Aisha's words, Sophia's dreams. I thought of the council's next meeting, where Malik would pitch a court app for teens, demystifying the system. I thought of the circle, where I'd share my story, not as a victim but as a builder. Lena's text buzzed, Dad, the mural's ready. You'll love it. I smiled, picturing her in Coconut Grove, her hands smudged with paint, her heart open to me. The weight of Harlan's fall wasn't my victory. It was the spark for what came next to Miami that listened, a justice that saw. I walked toward my car, the folder under my arm, Aisha's letter in my pocket, my mother's prayers in my heart. This wasn't the end. It was the root of something new, a justice that grew from pain but bloomed with hope, for Lena, for Aisha, for us all. The sun dipped low over Atlanta, casting a golden glow across the Lorraine Motel, its sign a quiet sentinel 1 mile from where Isaiah's blood had spilled. I stood beside a 15-foot mural, its steel and glass etched with the words live on, a tribute to my brother's mobile library, painted by 100 hands that believed in his dream. I'm Jada Carter, a Delta Force commander who's faced wars abroad. But this war against the prejudice that nearly took Isaiah has been my hardest. He stood beside me, his cane gone, his smile bright despite the scars, his words for change, the program now a beacon for 2,000 kids across Atlanta. Officer Paul Grayson's conviction was a victory, but it was this moment, the city's awakening, the community's fire, that felt like triumph. I felt their pulse, the 25 to 55-year-olds who'd marched with us, their hearts heavy with shared pain but lifted by hope. We'd built something bigger than us, a legacy that wouldn't fade, and as I looked at Isaiah, I knew we were just beginning. The verdict had cracked open the system. Chief Daniels, head of Atlanta's 1,800 officer precinct, faced a city demanding change. Under pressure from 500 letters sent by Tasha's campaign, he announced reforms. mandatory bias training for every officer, a 12-member civilian review board with teeth, and body cam audits every 6 months. I'd pushed for this, meeting with Daniels alongside Maya Torres, our lawyer, whose 42 years of fighting injustice made her a force. Her office, a war room of 15 staffers, had compiled a digital archive of 200 misconduct cases, now public, shared by 150,000 online. It wasn't just evidence, it was a mirror, forcing Atlanta to see its flaws. Grayson, stripped of his badge, had faded, his 20-year career undone by his own fear-driven bias. I'd learned he'd moved to a small town 20 miles away, haunted by his actions, a man broken not by us but by the truth he'd ignored. Officer Lee, his former partner, was different. At 32, she'd joined the review board, her eyes no longer avoiding mine, her voice steady as she pushed for training that saw people, not threats. Her redemption was a spark, proof that even the system's cogs could turn toward justice. Isaiah's recovery was our anchor. He'd left the hospital weeks ago, his strength returning as he spoke at community forums, his cane replaced by a fire that lit up rooms. We'd launched a national coalition, training 1,000 activists in 10 cities through virtual workshops. Our Zoom calls buzzing with 50,000 viewers. Isaiah's podcast, Words for Change, now reached 20,000 listeners. His episodes are call to action, blending stories of his kids with demands for equity. I taught yoga to 100 community members, my Delta Force discipline guiding their breaths, helping them release pain as I had in war zones. Tasha, once a trembling bystander, was now a leader. Her crowdfunding campaign hitting $250,000, funding not just legal fees but a new project, a Safe Streets mobile app, used by 5,000 Atlantans to log police interactions. Its data shared with Maya's team to track patterns. Tasha's posts on X, now reaching 100,000, were a megaphone. Her journey from guilt to power inspiring our audience, parents, workers, dreamers who'd faced bias and craved change. Pastor Elena Ruiz, our rock, expanded her restorative justice circles to 200 people, their stories a tapestry of pain and healing. A 45-year-old teacher shared her fear of driving at night, her words echoing Isaiah's 50, her gray hair a crown, led with a faith that steadied us. She'd started a youth-led documentary project, 30 teens filming Atlanta's untold stories, their footage shown at Piedmont Park to 500 viewers. Aisha, the 16-year-old poet, was their star, her Pages of Pain, now a short film, streamed 10,000 times. I watched her direct, her confidence a mirror of Isaiah's, and felt pride swell. Our audience, 25 to 55, would see themselves in her kids they'd raised, futures they'd fought for. The documentary wasn't just art, it was evidence, a new weapon in our fight, capturing truths no precinct could bury. The mural near the Lorraine Motel became a pilgrimage site. 600 visitors weekly leaving notes for Isaiah. I read one, scrawled by a 12-year-old, "Your books gave me wings." My heart ached, remembering Isaiah's library van, now a symbol parked at community centers, its doors covered in 200 messages of hope. Schools across Atlanta, inspired by his work, added equity lessons, reaching 2,000 students, their classrooms alive with discussions of justice. I joined one, speaking to 50 kids, my yoga calm grounding their questions. "How do you keep fighting?" a 14-year-old asked. I thought of Isaiah, bleeding but smiling, and said, "You fight for those you love." For our audience, this is personal, their own battles against prejudice, their dreams for their kids, their belief in a better tomorrow. We'd started an art therapy program, now serving 250 people, their paintings lining 2 miles of the Atlanta Beltline, each stroke a defiance of despair. I painted one, my hands unsteady, releasing guilt for not protecting Isaiah sooner. The program, led by a 40-year-old artist named Malik, who became a sanctuary, his own story of profiling woven into his work. Malik's murals, 10 feet tall, told Atlanta's history, from pain to promise, and I saw our audience in them, people who'd faced slights, who'd fought for change. Isaiah, now walking unaided, joined us, his laughter a spark as he painted. With kids, his library's mission alive in their brushes. We'd been invited to a national conference in D.C., 1,000 attendees strong. Our story streamed to 200,000. I spoke of strategy, Isaiah of hope, our voices blending to urge action. The audience cheered, their claps a promise to carry our fight. Grayson's shadow lingered, but it was fading. Maya's archive revealed his precinct's failures, 300 ignored complaints, a culture that bred his bias. Lee told me he'd called her, his voice broken, admitting he'd lost himself to fear. Her work on the review board, auditing 500 body cam videos, was her atonement, a step toward a system that served. Tasha's app grew, 10,000 users now, its data exposing patterns Maya used in court. Elena's documentary project won a grant, $50,000 to film more stories, each one a brick in our wall of truth. I stood with Isaiah at the mural, the Lorraine Motel's history heavy around us, and felt our city breathed. Atlanta wasn't just healing, It was transforming, its streets alive with 1,000 voices weekly, planning forums, painting walls, filming truths. As twilight fell, I reflected on our journey. I'd learned resilience wasn't just strength, it was choosing to rise, again and again, for those you love. Unity wasn't just numbers, it was hearts joined, like Tasha's, Elena's, Aisha's, beating as one. The strategy, my Delta Force core, wasn't just tactics, it was listening, planning, persisting. Isaiah's pain had sparked a fire, but our community's love kept it burning. I looked at him, his eyes bright, and knew our legacy wasn't just a mural or an app, it was a promise, etched in Atlanta's soul. That justice wasn't a dream but a fight we'd win together. For our audience, this is a call, their own struggles, their own hopes, reflected in our stand. I ask you, reader, if you were in a similar situation, with emotional hooks pulling your heart, conflict and tension testing your will, and character dynamics shaping your path, how would you approach it to achieve the best possible outcome? Isaiah squeezed my hand, his smile a beacon, and I knew, whatever came next, we'd face it, our fire unquenched, our legacy a light that would never fade.